Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome or welcome back, as the case might be. My name is Dalibor Petrovic. I'm the founder of the Summit Leadership Alliance and host of these TechTonic conversations. Welcome. Today is February the 11th, 2025. It's pretty cold where I'm at, so I'm wearing this thick Hudson's Bay sweater. We are going to be covering a very cool topic today. It's a pleasure and delight for me to welcome a global distinguished panel of experts as we unpack what is the latest Deloitte captured tech trend, part of Deloitte Tech Trends 2025, on what's next with AI. Now, to evangelize and share this with us, I am thrilled to welcome three of my colleagues and friends to this conversation. First, let's welcome Kate Schmidt. Kate, thank you very much for finding the time to be with us this morning, or actually afternoon, depending on where you're at. Kate is the Chief Operating Officer of Deloitte's AI Strategic Growth offering, and she's joining us from Chicago this morning. Kate, just very briefly, if you don't mind, I'll ask you to quickly introduce yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Delver, and thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. As you mentioned, Kate Schmidt, I am our Chief Operating Officer for Deloitte's AI Strategic Growth offering, which is exactly what I'm tasked to do. So I run and own the business case that we've created and took to our board so that we can actually transform the way that we're delivering AI for our clients, as well as helping to innovate so that we can bring new solutions to our clients as well, helping us grow as it relates to AI. So I'm really excited to be talking to you all about what's coming next and what we've been doing in order to implement AI. So, Dalver, thanks so much for having me here. I appreciate it.
So we are going to hear from you what Deloitte is doing on AI. So Deloitte on Deloitte kind of story today.
Best kind.
The best kind indeed. Thank you very much. I'm also thrilled to welcome Bruce Dewar. Bruce Dewar is the president and CEO of Lift Impact Partners, and I think a fellow Canadian on this call. So, Bruce, if you don't mind, just maybe a little bit of who you are and what you're doing.
First of all, it's a pleasure to be here, and I love your sweater. It's a good throw to Canada for sure. My name is Bruce Dewar, and I'm the president and CEO of Lift Impact Partners. We're a national organization that really builds the capacity of social purpose organizations to make a bigger impact. And we want everything to lead to meaningful employment by reducing barriers to those who are most vulnerable. So again, our job is to build capacity, and that's why we're excited to really get more involved in using AI to help scale solutions and to help more Canadians have better outcomes and better lives. So it's a pleasure to be here. And way back in my life, I actually got a master's in management of technology from MIT, and now I get to bring it to life a bit differently through this job, which I never envisioned when I started this job.
Fantastic. I very much look forward to hearing the Lyft story. We're going to unpack that in a few minutes. And to help us do that, I'm thrilled to welcome my friend and colleague, Kelly Raskovich. Kelly, greetings.
Hello, how are you? It is cold in Minnesota too, so I'm right there with you on the sweater.
We've got Minnesota, we got Vancouver, we got Alberta, we got Chicago. Like this is a pan-continental conversation.
Yes.
Kelly is the executive editor of Deloitte's Tech Trends. And Deloitte Tech Trends is premier #1 publication globally that Deloitte produces every year on topics of enterprise technologies and what are the emerging trends. So I think it makes sense, Kelly, for you to give us a little bit about your background and then lead us into, we'll start with the overview of tech trends, right?
Yeah, let's do it.
Awesome.
Okay, well, thank you all for joining. I hope everyone is staying warm on this Tuesday. And Kelly Raskovich, as Dalibor said, I'm the executive editor of this year's Tech Trends. It is our 16th year doing this, and our whole goal and premise is to really think about what's new and next in tech and how do we make it approachable. I think one of the things that's so hard to unpack is as we have buzzwords hitting us left and right, front and center, it's hard to unpack like what we should really care about and focus on, and what are some things that might be coming up later or really not important to us. And so helping make sense of that is really the goal and premise of this. So happy to be here today. We have Q&A open. So I think, Dalibor, that's important to note too. We are here for you all. So any questions, comments, happy to address those live or after the session too. And then one of the things I'd like to share kind of as we kick off, and I'll share my screen in just a sec too, is certainly the exec editor is a big part of my role, but another one of my roles is a mom. And so I share this because I think technology is so foundational for everything we do, right? And so my little one is now 3, but this past summer I was taking her to school, and one of the teachers was hesitant to ask me something. And I was like, hey, what's up? I've gotten to know them really well over the past 2 years. And she was like, do you practice presentations in front of a mirror? And I said, no, why? And she's like, well, Riley's been talking, right? She's been talking to anyone and everything, but also no one. She's been talking to a wall and you name it. And I was like, oh, that's so weird. I wonder why. Well, I take all my calls with AirPods. And so she's seeing me talking to you all over the globe, pacing across the room, you name it, and has seen me talk to everyone and no one all at once. And so I share that as kind of a node of the future is already here. It's just unevenly distributed. And technology is impacting our personal lives and our professional lives, whether we like it or not. I promise I've righted the wrong on my daughter. She does make eye contact. She can definitely know that talking to a person is ideal, although it is nice to talk to yourself every now and then too. But I think it's really important, right? I think 10 years ago, we even said as part of our tech trends that every company is going to become a tech company. And in some way, shape, or form, that's become true because every company is either tech fueled or tech centric, right? So you might not be a technology company in and of itself, but technology is fueling how you grow, how you interact with your customers. And so I think it's so important that that's something that we set as the foundation and baseline for how we're going about this today. And Dalibor, just a quick check. You can see my screen, right?
Yep, we can see your screen. And for the audience members, this actually is live on this Tuesday, February the 11th. So if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to use the Q&A function and ask the questions. I encourage you. We are recording this session. It'll be posted on YouTube on TechTonic Conversations within a few hours. But if you are here with us live and have questions, feel free to shoot them. Back to you, Kelly.
Awesome. And this is part of a broader series too. So for those that are kind of walking through the lay of the land, how we've done this for the past, I think 2-3 years, Dalibor, with you.
3 years. Yeah,
we've had like a 7-part series, right? So tech trends itself, we have 6 trends as part of tech trends. And so we have one that's an overview that I know Mike Bechtel, our chief futurist, did with you a few weeks ago.
Correct.
So that one is a speed date across all 6 of the trends. And then this is the second deep dive where we're going to talk all about our information trends. So this one's all about what's new and next in AI, which is why we have Kate and Bruce joining us as well. So we'll dive into that shortly. But just in terms of grounding, because there might be some folks that have been on this journey with us and then others that might be net new. Tech Trends is our annual publication of what's new and next in tech. And by making heads and tails of that, we do it through a few ways. So one, we do a lot of primary research and secondary research throughout the year. And then we also take a lot of time connecting with our clients. So understanding where they're seeing progress along dimensions, what they're doing in terms of innovating and thinking through things, because we are seeing pockets of this happening across the globe. And so shining a light cross industry and globally on some of the client stories across all these trends is something that is really important, because whether you're working at a consumer company, you can learn just as much from another consumer example, but probably the same from an oil and gas company too, right? So a lot of what we do is make this real through those client stories. And another thing that's net new this year is in the past, we've had to shoehorn all of our AI advancements and developments into one trend. And so this year, what we've done is this is really actually the theme of this year's report too, which is like AI everywhere. And so we've woven in AI advancements and kind of how AI is going to evolve all of the other trends throughout each trend. So something new, fun, and important. But the notion is this, is that just like we expect electricity to work or this hypertext for the webinar, right? We're kind of expecting and seeing AI becoming more woven into the foundation of everything we do. So it's not necessarily that we're using AI, but that it's really becoming foundational and table stakes for how we show up and do everything, right? So it's kind of becoming infused into how we're working, how we're evolving, and it's just going to be expected as part of our day in and day out. So just like we don't really think about electrons as it relates to electricity, I think that's where we're headed with this trend too. So know that that's kind of a theme and a thread throughout the report. And I write a little bit more about it in this year's introduction. So if you want to dive more into that, you absolutely can. But for this specifically, in terms of how we're operationalized and organized as part of tech trends, we ground ourselves in our macro technology forces framework. And we used to not even leverage this framework. And I think it's really important to note that we have over time taken a look at kind of where we're seeing these trends headed and created a framework that lasts over time. So Dalibor, next year when we publish the 17th version of this, you'll see the same, ideally, forces framework, but the content within them changes. And this is important for two reasons. One, we've seen that the top three are elevating forces. These are really our sources of innovation. So this is where we're seeing advancements in metaverse, unlimited reality, AR, VR. This is also what we're going to be talking about today as it relates to AI, right? We're seeing the abundance of AI and how that is coming to play and making us be more intelligent. And then from a computation perspective, this is where we highlight things like cloud, software, hardware, you name it. This year's one is all around hardware is strategic yet again, right? But these are kind of our sources of how we innovate, how we grow. And then our grounding ones, those are the bottom three. And those are all around kind of what we say is like the business of tech, right? So think of these as ones, I think of these ones as more of the adulting ones of you got to get your house in order and to play on the top, right? Like if you don't have that tech talent, that culture, that strategy in place, you're not even going to get the value from those top things to begin with. Cyber and trust, making sure you have, a strategy in place for how you keep those bad guys out. Or core modernization. This one's our rusty and trusty one, but this is one we have to figure out how to play nicely with those white hot innovations up top.
When I saw this for the first time, and this is now, I think, 3 years old, this concept.
3 years, yes.
Yes, 3 years old. I was like, oh my God, this here is such a simple and elegant but punchy way to think about technology strategy in any enterprise. So, like, as you know, Kelly, I've been in tech strategy for decades. This is the simplest, punchiest framework that I saw that can be helpful for any CIO, CTO, any executive responsible to steer enterprise technology forward. I would encourage you to think of this because the grounding force is exactly what you need to be doing within your technology enterprise department, if you wish, to build the foundations of, world-class business of technology delivery. This is where enterprise service management fits. This is where operating model and structure fits. Cyber, obviously, and core modernization. Now, what I thought was really powerful is that we extracted core modernization from like the business of technology because it's an obstacle, and everyone has to deal with it. Plus, core modernization, legacy applications that we are dealing with now, that's going to continue. Like systems that we are implementing today will be the legacy for the next generation to deal with. So this is very, very powerful. And you need that on the bottom to actually maximize the opportunity to take advantage of things that are at the top, the cool things.
Yeah, the shiny stuff.
Yes.
I think it's definitely one that's been lasting and it's helped us have those conversations around how do you really make sense of it, right? Because I think you can plot, I think we've done it, right? Like you can plot over time how all of our trends have mapped to those six, right?
Yeah.
And so I think it's lasting, and I think it's going to continue to be a way of how we show up in the future. And I think it helps tee up those conversations of you can do all those way on innovation stuff, but if you don't have the talent, I mean, it's not going to work, right? Or cyber, right? Like you have to think through those. So it's super important. And I think last week you had your deep dive on interaction, so folks can go back and listen to that if they want. But this, today we're really going to be focused on that second trend, that information trend. And this is all around what's next in AI. And this one is really kind of diving into the notion that it's not a one size fits all approach, right? I think this one has been a journey and a fun one to be on, especially because Mike and I were together 2 years ago, right? And we demoed, stable diffusion models, right? We image diffusion models to our clients and said, hey, give this a shot, right? So I think we've been on this journey of what is this? What is Gen AI? How are people using it? What's the value in it? And I know it's taken off in such a big way. And so really one of the things we're seeing this year is really making sure folks get the fundamentals right. I think Bill Briggs, our CTO, jokes that over the past year or so, it might have been and felt like, these random acts of digital where we're doing a lot of proof of concepts and trying to see what sticks. And last year in our trend, we really highlighted that notion of leading with need. Like, what are the problems we should actually solve for? Because I think leading with that need helps us make sure we're tackling those biggest problems first versus using tech to use tech. And so organizations across the board are really starting to get this right. And one of the things that's really important as part of it, and Kate, I'm sure you can talk about this in a little bit too, right, is the importance of data, right? If we don't have the right data as the underlying and underpinnings of these large language models, we're not going to get the value from it. So I think really taking the time to make sure we have that tee up is super important. One of the stats is that I think we've seen that up to 70% of organizations are actively exploring or implementing large language models, but fewer than a third of them are actually moving into production, right? Because there's that trouble with data access or even cleansing to begin with. And so folks are seeing value, but this is a journey, right? This isn't an overnight destination. And I think it's one where people are making fundamental movements in this space. And so excited to kind of hear from Bruce too around how they're approaching this with Lyft. But I'll tee up kind of two more things and then I'll stop sharing my screen. I think what's new about this year specifically is that we're seeing what we like to say, like different horses for different courses. And so what we mean by that is that not everything needs to be a large language model, nor should it, right? Think about it from a sustainability perspective. We're seeing small language models come up and are trained on highly curated data sets that are solving more specific problems versus everything using a large language model. And I think this is one that really resonates because, if you have a model that's focused on financial analysis, it probably doesn't need to be the same model that you're doing for customer inquiries, right? So I think making sure you have that like specific problem set you're trying to solve, and then you have the data to support it. Another thing we're seeing light up is that multimodal AI, right? So I think this is where, going from image to text, from song to text, from text to image, there's so many ways in which we can engage now. And this is one that I think is going to continue to take off over time too, is the approachability of that multimodal AI is super important. And then next, we joke that just like we say there's an app for that, we now say there's an agent for that. And this one is certainly taking the headlines from an agentic AI perspective. But what we're seeing here is really a foundation and a shift of the future of AI can focus on that execution from an AI perspective rather than just human augmentation. I'll actually I heard Delbor Mike say this in the overview session, and it resonated well with me. And so he actually compared agentic AI to the show Downton Abbey, right? And how Lord Grantham, he doesn't say when he wants to go to town, shine my shoes, pack my lunch, get everything ready, right? He just says, let's go to town, right? And all of a sudden, everything, the whole staff behind him is helping make sure that happens, but that they're interacting with each other. They're making decisions on behalf of him to get that to happen. And so I think that I've never seen Downton Abbey. I watch other shows, but all that to say, it resonated, right? Like he said, one statement, but things happened to
Yeah.
make that happen in the past, and people executed on his behalf. And so I love how that's such a kind of relatable example of it seems simple, but there's a lot to it when you think about it. And so I know we'll see. I think this will continue to get kind of the headlines over time. And so really excited to see where that goes, especially as a lot of us I joke that like I would love to have an assistant where, I'm headed to New York later today. I would love to have things work on my behalf to make that easier, right? So anyways, just some thoughts, perspectives. Dalibor, before we shift it to Kate and Bruce, I'd love to get a beat from you. How are you seeing this trend light up? And is
Yeah.
this something that resonates with you over time? I know you've been on this journey with us.
Oh yeah, 100%. As a matter of fact, the Downton Abbey story
Mm-hmm.
that Mike shared, I heard him mention this a few years ago as
Oh,
we were
okay.
as we were talking about what is the future likely going to be like. But it was at that time, it was before the chat GPT broke through in November 20, whenever
Yeah.
it was 23. So it was, I think that what is happening is that vision, now the technology is catching up and making it very, very real, present today. So clearly you guys were onto something even at that time. But here is how I would interpret what's happening. I think that we were faced with two potential futures
Mm-hmm.
as it relates to AI. One future was, and I think that would have been a dystopian future, that some entity would come up with AI to the point where they will dominate the market.
Yep.
And if that entity ended up being government, that would have been the end of the game, end of the story, right? Domination, and that would have been a dystopian future. I think that what we are seeing is something very different play out. We are seeing very active competition
Mm-hmm.
with multiple players, and now we know multiple global players lighting up, coming up with innovation that is, well, what used to be, a 6-month cycle shrunk to a month cycle, then shrunk to a week cycle, and now it seems like we are getting breakthroughs daily, sometimes
Yeah.
twice a day. But what is good about it, in my opinion, it's completely distributed around the world. So we are creating a very rich marketplace of these solutions, which I think is the necessary step to lead us collectively into a more utopian future as opposed to dystopian one. So that's how I would sort of interpret big picture what I think is happening. Does
Love it.
anyone agree with that, or have a different view on this?
Kate, Bruce, do you have any reactions, add, edits, deletes?
Sorry, Bruce, go ahead.
Well, you go ahead first, Kate.
Oh, no, I mean, I think, right, competitive inertia is for sure out in the market right now. And I do think it's a good thing. And I think that we should encourage this kind of innovation. I think what we're seeing with our clients quite a bit, and we mentioned this in our latest State of Generative AI survey, Kelly, that you referenced before too, is
Yep.
that while the pace of innovation in the market is moving really quickly, the ability for clients to actually translate that into enterprise value and implement into a production system, feeling comfortable with the guardrails and policies they have in place,
Mm-hmm.
feeling comfortable with the adoption metrics that they're seeing, feeling comfortable with their ability to drive compute and have costs, and end up returning, providing returns. I think there's a pretty big gap between the innovation inertia that we're seeing in the market and how our clients are actually able to apply some of these technologies right now, which is okay. Like, I love the idea that we're seeing so much innovation. I love that it's distributed, Dalibor. I love that this is like the free economy of AI, right? Which is awesome. That's what we should be doing, hopefully, all in the name of building AI that we should build, not just building AI because we can build it, right?
100%.
But I think we are still seeing that kind of divide between what we're seeing in the market and how clients are able to apply it, which is fine too, right? This is hard stuff to do, and there's a lot of considerations to scale these technologies all the way back to the plumbing that you had mentioned, Kelly, on the core forces, in order to do the white hat shiny stuff. It's hard work. So I'm comfortable with that separation between what we're seeing in the market and how our clients are evolving.
I think you're right on. So the chief technology officers, CIO, CTO, is now facing real challenges. I think it's on two fronts. One is, are we ready? Are we ready to actually leverage this technology? Do we have the data? Is it clean? Is it properly governed? Is it safe to use this technology actually? Like, are we exposing ourselves to something that we are not yet aware of, right? So that I think is a real question. And then the other question is, I think there is now this, this almost a tyranny of choice. Like, what do you do? Where do you go? Where do you invest? With whom do you work?
How do you get started?
Yes, right. And it looks like every week, new entity shows up with a new solution that outpaces existing one, and it pops out from France, from China, from United States. It's very interesting. Where do you place your bets as a CIO, as a tech executive? Those are two very, very significant decisions. And because, Kelly, you mentioned in the beginning, AI is going to be like electricity, like it's going to be fueling everything. These choices can sink the ship. Like you can sink the ship if you make it wrong, right? So these are very high stakes moments for all of these technology leaders who need to be struggling with these decisions and figure out the right one. This is why I'm so excited to hear some real client stories about this.
Yeah, I think Kate's point around, the business of assumption rate is the real key. It's dictating what's getting it selected or adopted. And as you said, the CIOs are really pressured of, are there something new and shiny here? Is that better? But it's always focusing on what is the business need we're trying to solve? What's the problem we're trying to deal with? Is there something in front of me that I know is, as you said, safe, secure, proper governance, etc., I can adopt now and deliver? While this other noise is being figured out, is that the right solution? It might be shiny, but I don't need a shiny thing to be the solution. And too often people jump to something new and shiny, and AI has lots of new and shiny things, as you talked about. But it's going back, and the businesses are saying more and more, does this solve my need now? And can it be adopted by my team easily to get the solution? And again, is that going to be that cost effective? As you both mentioned already, it's going to be a critical piece. So I think the technologies are there. It's that assessment of what the business can actually absorb. And it's now sort of, it's dictating it, even though the technology is out there.
Yeah,
totally. And Bruce, I'd almost add to that too, not just what they can absorb, but like what their risk tolerance is, right? Like I've definitely seen clients take a look at, okay, there's all the shiny objects, and they've gone through the process of asking the firm to submit their ideas for use cases. They're funneling it down. They're triaging down to what they want to do. But then it comes down to, do I really want to put a chatbot in front of my customers right now? Or do I want to start somewhere in the back office in finance or manufacturing, where I know that if there is any issue, as it relates to risk, that it's a little bit more contained, right? And I'm not going to find myself on the front page of the Wall Street Journal trying to justify, how my model made decisions on my own behalf, right? So I think there's lots of consideration for the use case specifically, Bruce, and also the risk tolerance of the customer as well.
And I think that's why you're seeing that multi-pronged approach of stuff in the back office that you can control and manage and get to more efficiencies. And I can talk about that with our example. And then things that are going to be more outwardly facing that you have to make sure are really right, because they can be the one that really, takes your brand down or puts you in the wrong position really quickly. So you have to make sure that's really perfect before you go to market with it. So I think it's that multi-pronged approach is going to be the key.
And Bruce, I want to, first of all, congratulate you and your company for actually being highlighted in Deloitte's Global Tech Trends. So outstanding achievement in and of itself. Would you be so kind to give us the story?
Sure. So, I don't want to make it too long, because I want to hear the rest of the conversation, and we'll take questions from the audience as well. But, I guess go back in sort of 2023, we started really we got excited about the potential of AI. I think everyone in the world got excited. It was out here, AI, it's going to be this great game changer. There's a fear too. It's going to take away jobs. It's going to replace people, etc. But we saw that when computers first got involved, everyone thought we're going to lose jobs or we're getting rid of paper in society. But 2023, we got excited as an organization and we started investigating. We've actually built into our business plan to start looking at AI and how it could be used as we move forward. I would say then in 2024, we started experimenting or playing with AI. And so, we had various team members who were really excited about it. We said, okay, start looking at where we could think it could be played, how it could play out. And at the same time, we work with cohorts to try and drive social change. So we had a cohort, and we said, let's have a conversation with them around where could AI help them? What could be the sort of that piece as well? And so that gets to the sort of the case study what I want to talk about. But as an organization, as we were going through, and it goes back to what Kelly said, we realized that the data was going to be key, and we had to clean up our own data, areas to investigate. And so we started looking at data, and then working with Deloitte, we created a data warehouse back then, which is outdated because now it's data lakes. Whenever I say data warehouse, it's almost like I have to put something in a jar for saying something wrong. But again, it's now we're into a data lake, which is a lot more dynamic, and what you can digest is much easier than just data. You can put documents, etc., and all the different modes that you were talking about. And so we're working on that and I think organizations, especially in the social sector, realizing they have all this data, but they don't mine it, they don't use it, they don't use it to be more efficient or predict the future or client trends or things like that. So again, the data is critical, but they have to understand how to get it organized and how to use it strategically. And as you said, it doesn't have to be, long, big language solutions now. It can be much easier, and again, it'd be more cost effective to mine it. And so again, we're working on the data piece now. We're thinking out how can we create a data lake that we could be shared with some SBOs so they can dive in and don't have to reinvent the wheel. But on our case study, we were talking to settlement sector agencies around what are the pain points for them? What are they seeing? And in those conversations, they came up with, 5, 6, 7 common things they were seeing that was a challenge for them across the board. And we're saying if we could create something using AI, could we actually reduce that to you as a burden, make you more efficient, but also make it easier for your client to actually access your services or find you even in the maze of who's available in my community. So again, you're in Alberta. So, who's my closest service provider that offers what I'm looking for or what I need? Or I'm in Alberta today and I'm moving to Chicago. What service provider is there? And I don't want to have to reinvent all my information to them. I want to be able to share it easily so it can just be transformed. So we picked that sort of engaging a client as one of the first ones we should sort of look at. So we're creating we call it a Lift Impact Hub, where we think down the road we'll have various solutions available for the sector to tap into to start scaling solutions across the country. And as we went into that, again, when we sat down with the group and had these conversations, people were thinking about what they thought of AI is word recognition and then transfer over to another solution. Where it's like, no, you can actually speak in your native language. It can translate into English if that's the language you want. And it can then fill out a document and come back to you so you can, have this interaction. But also you can go further. It's not just one word interaction. It's actually a conversation with the right AI application to make your client feel really welcome. And so the real key we through the conversation is how do you train that to be authentic to you and your brand? So as you identified, Kate, you don't want to go out there and put something out into the market that doesn't represent you. So taking the time to really put that in place. And as we went through, there was a big fear around bias, that AI is going to bring all this bias to bear. And so we had these conversations around there's human bias in all of us right now. How do we start training and putting guardrails in place? I think, Kelly, you were talking about guardrails to protect against some of those fears. And we're not going to get it perfect, but the more we can be involved in creating it and updating as we go forward, the better it's going to be. And it seemed for the clients that the groups, the SPOs we were working with in this cohort, that gave them a bit of relief. It wasn't this, it's an off-the-shelf solution that may have bias. We get to actually influence those guardrails and give our thoughts as well. And one example, one of the persons said, there was a person in their community who was from country X, and they came in, and when they put their application for a job, they never got selected to get to the interview process. And as they went through, they started to realize it was probably the name or the university they went to was at first, I don't recognize it, they're not going to be selected. So they went into the same organization, put different names in, and they got selected. So we said, but again, you can train your AI application to take that out of play. So you can take away that bias to allow that to move forward. So they got quite excited about employment opportunities you could be using AI. So that's another thing we're going to start working on with this group around is how do we get, newcomers to come in and make sure they have the right capabilities, it gets matched to these employment, and we take away any bias, and it makes it, again, help them get into employment quicker because we know that's a really important part. So I think this use case discussion, you start unpacking what are the real challenges, and then you start looking at which AI solutions are out there that could fill the need and what's the right one. And you don't want to get too fancy because, again, especially in the not-for-profit world, they have limited resources, so they have to be really strategic where they invest and how. So you want something that is reliable, it's approved and it's not going to raise any flags. So that our conversations really have the sector partners we're working with really open up to the opportunities, and it's safe to go here. And if we don't go here, we're going to fall behind long term. We have to be more efficient, and if we can actually have things that are making us more efficient, both in back of the house and with our clients, we're going to have more time for that conversation that we need to help those individuals get to the next level. So it's a shift of your skills, and that's the other part. We had lots of conversations that upskilling is going to be so critical. If you don't do the upskilling to match your technology, it's like having this fancy car and you don't know how to drive it.
Yeah.
You need to have the right skills to be able to operate it and know where the challenges are. And you might need to bring new team members in or do things, but again, you need to be able to totally utilize that technology.
Yeah.
So that's where our journey was.
I love the notion too of like leading with need, right? Like listening to what those pain points are and tackling to solve it. And I think starting small and scaling. So I feel like the intentionality you've had throughout the whole way has been inspirational. And even the transparency towards that bias and tackling that from the jump is huge. So I love that, Bruce. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, we're about to have some conversations with groups of dealing with people with disabilities, and I believe they're going to have different bias than those people that we worked with on the immigration. And so I'm really
Totally.
looking for the conversation, and we're very fortunate. Deloitte is hosting us at a greenhouse to really unpack that conversation, and I think it's going to be really enlightening both to Deloitte to see what the bias are or the perceived bias from that group, and what solutions we can put in place to make them feel comfortable with technology.
So
Love it.
you are effectively, Bruce, you are kind of step one is to level the playing field for your clients in the cohorts
Yeah.
to position themselves as peers to the rest of the population without biases removed to help if it's an immigrant properly be considered for positions that in their experience they're not, because there is something is off. Something is off in the way they are approaching it. You're leveling the playing field for them, right? And now you're saying that now that has worked. That has worked. Let's now look at other groups, other communities where this could be helpful. That's where you say, people with disabilities would be logical sort of another cohort. Is that
Yeah.
fair?
So again, what we do is we want to remove the barriers, societal barriers and emerging barriers. And again, for those most vulnerable. So again, two of the vulnerable groups are newcomers and people with disabilities. But there's others, there's youth, there's inner city, there's a variety. And over time, we hope we can create multiple options or tools available to deal with what that is. But you need to, again, level set as you put it, make them feel comfortable and really understand what are their issues and what are the barriers they're facing in just general delivery. But then how can AI step in and be part of that solution?
Yeah.
Totally.
I love that. I love that we are highlighting in the tech trends a social impact story here, and it's a nonprofit, Bruce. Is that correct?
Yes, correct.
So it's fantastic. So thank you very much for sharing. This is pretty damn cool.
Yeah.
So
And we're
cool.
very privileged, to be here in this talk, but again, to work with Deloitte, and I think we're aligned around. We really want more people to have meaningful employment, and we have to remove barriers to make that happen. So it's been a great partnership, and it's been great to be a client of Deloitte's as well.
Love it. Kate, would you mind taking us a little bit on a journey of kind of how we're approaching it at Deloitte from an AI perspective and how we're tackling it?
Sure thing. There's so many things I could talk to that, we went through a very similar experience that Bruce went through. I do want to start off in saying that, like, if you listen to Bruce's story, one of the key things that I took away is that, like, Bruce and Lyft decided they were going to implement AI. right? And then they went back and said, all right, so what are all the things that I need to do and all the lessons that they learned along the way in order to scale just that one solution, which is huge, right? You know, Kelly, you talked in the beginning a little bit about we were in this age of POCs, and there was there was a good reason why we were doing all those proofs of concept, and we learned a lot there. But scaling at least just one solution all the way to production, the way Bruce was able to do, like he just articulated about 14 different things that he learned along the way that he would not have learned if they hadn't tried to take it over that final hunt to get it into production, right? Because you don't need the guardrails in place if it doesn't make it to production, right? You don't need to think about adoption and upskilling if it doesn't make it into production and isn't truly being used. You know what I mean? So I love Bruce's story because it's a bit of like, here's our story and how we approached it, but it's also a huge story on here are all the lessons that I learned because we actually went the extra mile and took that solution to production. So it's just such a great component to that story that I wanted to call out. We had a similar approach. So a couple different things that we did. We approached deploying AI within Deloitte in 3 major categories. One, we focused on everyday productivity. So we actually launched, we have a tool called Sidekick that we launched for our practitioners. It's used millions of times a week, which is fantastic. But we started off saying, okay, so if we want to build AI into what we're doing, let's go with a low risk area. We are an audit firm, right? We are very risk averse. Let's start with a low risk area and let's focus on how do we bring productivity to our practitioners? How do we make our practitioners just a little more productive, a little bit easier for them to do their jobs? And let's start there, right? It's not impacting our clients. We could roll it back at any time if we get nervous, right? It's going to have limited access to data internally, right? It's not going to, hit our system of record. It's just going to help us do our jobs better. No brainer, right? So we started there with, enhancing our everyday productivity. We then started to think through, okay, so our people is not our product, but the heart of what we do, right? Yeah. So everything that we're doing is to try to deploy our practitioners in a way that they can effectively and efficiently deploy similar solutions in a similar way, maximizing the amount of quality that we can bring to our clients and doing it in a repeatable fashion, right? So we took a look at our delivery platforms that we've created so that we can have consistent delivery in the way that we deliver an AI project or an ERP project or that data modernization project, the data lake project that Bruce added. For every client, we want to do that. And while every client is very unique, we want certain things to be repeatable and us to take the same steps, for every client, so that our delivery is sound. So after productivity, we then said, let's take a look at our global delivery platforms. And are there ways for us to embed AI into those so that our clients can actually benefit from the delivery that we're doing? Again, taking a low risk approach because it's our delivery platform that helps us deliver better, but the value can be seen on the client side because we're now helping our practitioners deliver a little bit differently in a way that's hopefully going to benefit our clients and be more consistent across, project to project. And then third, we said our internal operations, absolutely. Back office, marketing, finance, all of those things. We have our own systems internally that we work with as well. And so we started to work with our vendors as well as all of our back office groups to understand how can we build efficiencies into what they do on a daily basis. In the US, we're a 180,000 person firm, right? There's a lot of plumbing that happens behind our firm just to make things go around. Right? So we then took a look at how do we reimagine some of our back office. Again, choosing some of those use cases, just like Bruce did, to see where was the most impact with the most reward, minimizing our risk at all times. And tried to, and right now we're even still working through some of those use cases. And then what we tried to do was make sure that we built it on a foundation of technology that we already had in-house, right? Looking at the vendors that we're already using in-house, trying to leverage our trustworthy AI frameworks to make sure that we've got the right guardrails and in place and policies in place so that what we're implementing is safe, working with our Office of General Counsel and our risk teams from day one. And then fluency has been kind of a cornerstone of something that we've been promoting throughout our firm internally and are now taking it external to our clients as well. We've been working on AI fluency since way back in 2020. We actually launched our AI Academy, but we continue to work to build fluency with our practitioners. If it's to help them be more productive every day, if it's to help them sell, more projects to our clients, helping them have, more robust conversations about AI. Our fluency programming had to evolve just with everything else. So trying to continue to bring fluency to our practitioners so that they are not just fluent, but more astute in the topics of AI.
This is pretty cool what you just described. Effectively, three parallel streams of attack. Back office, like you can almost think of back office, mid office, front office. On the back office front, you're working with your vendors to optimize, automate, reduce waste. So the back office function is all about optimization. This mid office function, let's say global delivery, is how Deloitte comes together to deliver specific programs. That's about consistency and quality, right? And then you mentioned sidekick. That's in the hands of the actual practitioner. That's about productivity. So it's a three-pronged approach. That's very, very cool. And I love what you say way back in 2020. That there is a message in and of itself, isn't it?
It does feel like a long time ago.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And Kate, I mean, as you think about it too, one of the questions that came in was around like, how is this going to change the future of work? Like, how are you all thinking about this too? I mean, I know we spoke a little bit, you just touched on it, which is like, I think the importance of upskilling, and then I think giving people time back in their day to do those value added things.
Yeah. I think there's a lot for us to figure out on that topic, Kelly. And right now we're really focused on making sure, we have pockets within the firm where people are not using AI as much as I do on a general basis, right? And that's okay, right? But we want to continue to encourage that evolution, and it's going to be a journey. But I think, we're going to see, as Dalibor mentioned earlier, AI agents are coming into the market now. We're going to slowly see a single agent from be able to do a single task to be able to do, actually from be able to tell you a task, like when you put something into a model today, it can tell you something. Now, very shortly, we're going to see it where you're going to be asking agents to do more things. And then, as you mentioned in the Downton Abbey example, where there's going to be agents helping other agents do other things so that you can get out the door and go to town, apparently. As we see more of this coming together, we're going to see, I think, our workforce shift a little bit. But one of the things that is so clear to me that we continue to evaluate is where and when we need to keep the humans in the loop, because there's our practitioners are the lifeblood of what we do, and it's such a huge consideration. But helping them adjust the way that they spend their time throughout the day, I think is going to be something that we're going to be really looking at. Like, what does the future of a consultant's day look like 10 years out, right? And it could look really different.
Yeah, totally. Well, and I think that notion of humans with technology, Bruce, you're going to say something too?
Yeah, no, I get really excited when I hear team members say, we used AI and it freed me up to do X. Or this made this much faster, so now we can actually do more of that, but it still frees me up to do more of X. And that when they come back and share those stories, I get very excited that we can keep evolving and be better on delivery and supporting our SPOs. And then by leading by example with them, they can start doing the same thing. Because we want everyone to be more efficient, more effective. And in the social sector, we're, having to do more with less all the time. But, we really care about our clients. So what are you going to do for the clients? It's, again, how do you show up differently to get better results?
Yeah, I agree. I go through days where, like, now, if I didn't have AI, reforming that email or writing that executive summary would take me so much longer. And now I'm like, I don't know what I would do without it.
But it also levels up, because you may have team members that aren't good writers. So they put it in right away they're there. And they've been for years struggling quietly about writing this report and eating up more hours, and maybe not reporting them as billable hours in your case. But again, it's just putting more time and effort in. And now they've freed up to think differently strategically and do better work.
Write more. I mean, Kelly's never had that problem as executive editor of Tech Trends. However, some people do have that challenge.
Yeah.
No. I mean, I still use Sidekick too, for what it's worth, Kate. So don't worry. I'm using it daily.
So what I would love to know is, so both Kate, you and Bruce obviously have firsthand experience deploying AI capabilities all the way through to production use. If you were to think about like what were the biggest lessons you've learned along this journey? Maybe what were the biggest lessons in where are the critical success factors here? Or what were the gotchas? How would you respond to that? Maybe Bruce, do you mind if I start with you?
Sure.
Okay.
So I think one of the lessons is, really allowing people to play and experiment and see what they can do with it. So again, we had some team members who were really interested and said, okay, go and start practicing and coming back and share and help formulate what we want to do. The other part we realized early on is the leadership team and the CEO had to be really behind it. It couldn't be that we're just talking it, but we had to lead by example, that we care, we want this in there. That's why we embedded it in the business plan, etc. And it's interesting again when you hear people come back and say, we're not actually delivering on our business plan. We are using technology more, we're leveraging, etc. So that's fun. I think the other part is you're gonna, learning as you go along, continuously learning. You're not gonna have the solutions right away and be open to change and understanding, adding more information in to get the right result. And the other, another key piece we really learned is, the governance and policies, making sure those are in place and are really strong. And, it's taken us a long time to really create the policies that, the board feels comfortable with and we feel comfortable as well. And it's a process. And again, things are changing all the time. So you have to keep revisiting them on the policy front. But again, and really empower people to use the AI. And again, learning as you go is so critical.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And keep on pushing for what is the problem we're really trying to solve. Just don't do it because it's fun and exciting and shiny, but what are we really going to do with it? And is this going to make us better an organization, or is it going to help our clients in the case of our SBOs?
Yeah, Bruce, I would echo everything you said. I mean, we had to work to get our board and our CEO behind it. Fluency has always been, as I mentioned, a huge thing that we've been thinking about. Embedding our trustworthy AI framework into all of what we do to help us with guardrails. Those are all things that we address too, and things that we learned along the way. I would say one additional add that I think we didn't do well up front, but just because we're consultants and we're kind of an entrepreneurial team of people that want to get things done and work with our clients and do all the right things. But we learned very early on to bring in our risk and Office of General Counsel early on as we were bringing some of these technologies in-house to understand what the terms were, how much access to data they had. And that's something that I think we just as like I don't even know how to describe it, but we're not typically good at bringing in our risk teams up front, and they almost seem like a hindrance to helping us get things done. And for us, we've learned very early on that if we work hand in hand with our risk teams, we can move, evaluating a contract for a net new model for something shiny that we want to bring in, Bruce, right? From 8 weeks to 2 weeks, just because we've been able to bring them up, into the fold up front. They can understand the use case and then help guide us as to, how we want those terms and conditions to be articulated in our contracts. And it seems like such a nitty gritty, not so fancy, fun thing to have to think about. But we started off kind of, we're working with our internal risks teams initially, and we realized, they really need to be a partner. It's not another team. They're a part of this journey with us, and we've got to work with them early on so that we can all be successful and do it in a really safe way.
Yeah. I think building up that, I think it's a great point. Again, it's, again, you look at data lake, they want to see, well, visually, what does that look like? Do we actually have it built? And again, it's getting them to understand of where it's housed and how you're activating it. And it may not be like a hard product, like a computer they can see, but that's their mindset. Show me a physical product,
Right.
this data lake, right? So there's that transferring of knowledge and understanding what you're really producing, and having them engaged and understanding that early makes it easier.
Totally.
I totally agree.
So here is what I captured from this last few minutes. Curiosity. So encourage curiosity and encourage people to actually experiment. Yep. And as they experiment, in parallel, think about how do you lead with need? What is the actual problem that this experimentation could potentially solve for? The second thing you mentioned, Bruce, was visible executive support. And you mentioned you as a CEO and president of the company, you are seen as champion for this. And it made its way into your business plan. That's actually very important, I think. Number 3, governance and policies checked and validated and adopted and agreed by the board. Very important. Trustworthy framework, Kate, you mentioned. Figure out a model that you can leverage or adopt that will point you in the right direction in terms of right guardrails, right protections, and so forth. On that front, step further, bring in the risk and legal early. Perhaps even procurement, I might add, because typically that would be the
other people
right?
along the journey, right? I think it's bringing people in early and often, because I think if you co-create things together, people are buying what they're
100%.
People are like adopting what they co-create, right? So to your point, Dalibor, taking a step beyond risk and OGC, and it's making sure you're building solutions with the right people from the jump.
And I think, Kelly, the co-creation is the right word, because again, in our cohort work, it's all co-creation. And that's the way you can get the buy-in, and they own it, and they bring other ideas to the table, and they're more open to share. So
excellent. Fluency, so ongoing education, fluency, and ultimately what I captured is they closing the continuous loop of improvement. So let's learn, like plan, do, check, act, the famous Danning cycle. Seems to be the sort of the seventh thing that I captured. Fair?
Great summary.
Great.
Wonderful. I know that we are approaching time. This was very, very interesting conversation. I want to thank you very much. There is one more question from the audience. I'm thinking in the HR world, when several resumes, this could be something maybe for you, Bruce. AI using filters to have no bias according to education workers. Where would the personality choice be involved before a face-to-face interview? Interesting question. In that process of recruitment and hiring, when the biases are removed, where would a personality choice be involved before a face-to-face interview? That's an interesting question. Would anyone like to take it?
Right. Well, I just think you would, it's a great question. I think you would go back and look at how do you build that in, what tools are available to help you assess that and move it along a bit further before you have the face-to-face. And again, even in that part, for that personality, are there things there that are biased, again, the way the question's asked? So again, it seems like a simple question, but when you unpack it, there's lots of layers to it. But it's a great question, I think, to be looked at and built in as well.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Thank you very much. Kelly, may I pass it on for you to any closing remarks?
Well, just thanking everyone for being on this journey with us. I think it's just that, right? The notion, Kate and Bruce, that we just spoke about of the importance of co-creating. I think like we are part of the future of how this continues to shift, right? So I think just a call to action to what you said around using these tools, starting to see what's the art of the possible, because I think that's where we're going to continue to evolve onto how we make this beneficial, useful, how we drive growth, how we change how we're showing up. And so I'm really excited about where we're headed, and really grateful for the time and the insights. If there are any questions for those who might be listening to the playback, I think our doors are always open. So feel free to reach out to us, and happy to have continued conversations. But just want to thank Dalibor, you for continuing to host this, and Kate and Bruce for your time today. It's been wonderful to be with you all.
Absolutely. I concur. Thank you very much, everyone, for finding the time to be with us. And for the audiences, our third tech trend deep dive on the hardware, which is finding itself back at the epicenter of the conversations, will happen on Tuesday, March the 4th. So if you're looking to learn more about that, please, on LinkedIn, you can find it, click it, register, and join us. With that, thank you all very much, and have yourselves a lovely Tuesday afternoon.
Thank you
very much. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.